We're a 7-figure company, grew it from, it was literally Jerry Maguire. It had like $5,000, no business plan, and just kind of started it up almost 18 years ago.
Meet Darren Maggarro, the owner of a 7-figure digital marketing agency. In this interview, Darren shares with you how he built his agency, his advice to others that want to build their own business, and what he knows best, how to build an amazing team to run your business. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. There's so many more founder interviews coming up. Let's get to the interview. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
So yeah, my name is Darren. I started DSM 18 years ago, or it'll be 18 years in February. The business is DSM. We are a full service marketing agency. My background was in television when I started, so there wasn't really like the digital world back in '07, or it wasn't as robust as it is now. We primarily started doing traditional media and creative. And now I would say probably 85 to 90% of what we do is digital marketing, creative, account management. And we still do a little bit. We still have our first client. We still do a little bit of traditional, but it's not a huge chunk of what we do anymore.
I think you kind of touched on what DSM is. What services do you offer?
We're a marketing agency, like a full service marketing agency, but at our core, a lot of what it is strategy, execution, and reporting and analytics for digital. We have a 16-person agency. We have a 3-person creative team, and one of the creatives is also a developer. We have a 4-person digital team that runs, we have a VP of strategy. He runs all the strategy for the agency. And then he's got a team of 3 people handling all the digital execution and strategy.
And so what kind of inspired you to start that business? You said you were in television before. What was that transition? What inspired you to start this marketing agency?
Big believer in there's got to be a better way to do something. And so I worked at my agency. I graduated Lehigh University in 2000, went straight to the city to, New York to work at an agency doing television media buying. Did that for 5 years, got married in '05, came to an agency out in New Jersey, to a smaller agency to kind of what I thought was kind of lifting them up. And it turned out they were bringing me down. And so there was, a period of time where they landed a big T-Mobile account. I didn't want to travel. At the time I left my agency in the city, I was working on Toyota. So we were kind of going to California a bunch of times a year. And when my wife's family, they own a 120-year-old quarry business. So we're kind of like planted here in New Jersey forever. I just didn't want to travel anymore. And I really like coaching youth sports. So I coach football and lacrosse. And the only way I could really do that was to embark on my own journey and have my own company to be able to set my own schedule. And so that was kind of the impetus to start TSM.
How did you get your first customer? Was it pretty kind of like a transition from television, or?
So when I started DSM, one of the clients that I was working on at this other agency was a local brick and mortar. They were our first client. It's a 50-year-old men's clothing store, like a tailor and men's clothing store. And ultimately Ralph, the guy who's, his grandfather and father started it. Now his father's retired. And now, Ralph is like a year older than me. He's one of my best friends, but he's like, if you start this, I'll come over and be your first client. And so that's how it took a tremendous for him, a tremendous amount of faith. It was a leap of faith. It was just me. We had a good relationship, but it was a lot of people. When I started it, it was just them, me working out of a front porch with a laptop and just hustling. A lot of people in the town I grew up in that knew me from growing up, a lot of local small businesses. And, I'd ask for a project, we'd take it on, we do it well. I got something else for you to do. And I think year one, we did from February '07 until December '07, I think we did about $87,000. And then by year 2, we were up to, in '08, we probably did almost $500,000 by the end of '08. So it was, adding people, trying to figure out how to make this work. My first business, my ex-business partner, he was a creative working out of his house. I was, basically a sales guy and a account guy working out of my house. And we just figured, what the hell, let's do it. And so we got together in January, and kind of the rest is history.
I kind of want to combine my next 2 questions, because my next question would be like, what strategies have been most effective in acquiring and retaining customers? And I wonder also too, is that a lot of word of mouth?
Yeah, for us, it's been a lot of word of mouth. It's been doing a project, doing it well, gaining the trust of a client. The strategies in my role now as the CEO, I'm kind of like the brand ambassador for the agency, and I handle pretty much all new business. The majority of the leads that come in come through my network and sort of the people that I know and how I go about, my relationships. There's no secret strategy. It's really about, my wife and I are very different people. She's an introvert and I'm an extrovert. Like, I'll go to an airport, buy a bag of beef jerky, and I'll be in somebody's wedding party in 2 hours. Like, that's just the way I roll. There's people I've met on vacation that I become friends with that have sent business our way just by talking through people. But at the end of the day, like, that's great if you can like find the relationships. You also have to have the people to do the work and do it well. So there's been an incredible balance. Like, our team right now is just, it's an incredible bunch of humans that they're very good at what they do, but they're also just, everybody kind of loves working together. And I think that goes a long way as well. So I think it's sort of finding that competitive balance of finding a good group of human beings, but also finding a good group of human beings that's willing to go, to bat and is into their craft and loves what they do and is always trying to break a barrier, find something new, or, that's the other thing too, from a leadership standpoint. I'm not a micromanager. And so, like, knowing 8 and 10 years ago that I needed a CFO and I needed a COO to like kind of run things, like, that's not my bread and butter. It's not what I love. I love going out and forming relationships and maintaining the relationships, making sure that we're doing what we should do. And I think there's also a small part of it that's missed on, like, from a leadership standpoint. What we're doing right now in the agency world is not easy. A lot of accounts go. There's a lot of pieces to new business either getting cut or, next week, election day is going to be a big, eye opener for people. It's either going to open the floodgates or it's going to make everything contract more. And so it's also having an eye on making sure you're taking care of your team and that you're not chasing every dollar. It's knowing what clients will be good, what clients won't. Sometimes you have a hiccup with that, but for the most part, the people that work for you will work hard if they also know you got their back. And so that's very important too.
How do you differentiate yourself in a crowded market among other marketing agencies? And I think since you had such an early start, that was probably, you saw things scale and you were able to kind of combat that competition with that, maybe.
No, I kind of look at it the opposite way. We're not for everybody. Like, we just had an instance this week where we lost a very big client because the owner of the company didn't think we learned enough in 3 months about their business. We're vertical agnostic. And then, we have an offboarding month and their COO and CFO came back to us and was like, wow, this work you're doing is really good. Can we continue working together? And I was like, no, the experience we had with the owner of the company was horrendous and I'm not putting my team through that again.
This is going to be a very vague question. It might just come naturally for you, but I think there might be a lesson here for some people. How do you make friends like so easily? You said within 2 hours, you can be talking to somebody and be best friends with them. Does that come naturally to you? Are there things that you do and that you've learned how to be more, personable with people?
My wife jokes, like, I just talk a lot. I'm naturally inquisitive. My wife sometimes calls me Good Time Darren. I know my role at the company too. It's, like, we met a gentleman who just reached out last weekend, who we met in February on vacation down in Mexico. And we've forged a relationship. We've had dinner with his wife and him and my wife and them in New York City. And we're planning another one. Be yourself, like, I'm an acquired taste. I'm not for everybody. As you get older, I think you get more comfortable in your skin with that. I wish I knew this lesson when I was like in college. I was always a little trepidatious of revealing my whole self to people. You know what I'm saying? Like, even like in a bar talking to girls, it wasn't easy for me. Now, and I guess it's like after you're married, it's easier to do that because you're not like trying to attract attention or whatever. But it wasn't easy for me to like speak in public. It wasn't easy for me to like, I used to be afraid of speaking in public. Now, like in front of people, you can put me in a room in front of 1,000 people, I'd be fine. And it's also taken on new challenges. Like, we have a client, this happened the beginning of October, where she's the head of a local chamber of commerce and they were doing a fundraising event, and the fundraising event was Dancing with the Stars. And of course, somebody dropped out at the last minute. So, it's got its pros and its cons too. Like Kelly's like, I know you'll be the life of the party. Can you do it for me? I think as you get older, as you experience more things, as you start to feel comfortable in your own skin, and I'll tell you this too, on the other side of it, I still have a lot of imposter syndrome. There are days I wake up and I'm like, I'm not worthy of running this team, or I'm not great at it.
You hit on this a lot because you were able to construct a team that does a lot of great work for you. Running your agency, I'm sure, comes with a lot of demands. What skills or habits have you developed that have been critical in leading DSM effectively?
It's ended up in relationships ending. It's ended up in learning how to manage relationships, and having patience, I think for me has been the biggest lesson that I've learned in terms of trying to make sure that I am being the best leader that I can be. And again, I'm a big proponent of, I've learned to become a big proponent of making sure that I'm listening better. I like to talk. I like to be the one leading. And sometimes you just have to realize that you don't have all the answers. And if you can realize you don't have all the answers and be comfortable in that, it allows other people to surprise you. And maybe it's not a surprise. Maybe they had it in them all along, but it gives other people the opportunity to share. And it also alleviates some of the pressure. Like even though I run a small agency of 16 people, like their lives are still in my hands. And at the end of the day, like I'm the ultimate yes or no. I don't have to be the end all be all yes or no all the time. And so that's helped me a lot.
You've talked a lot about having a great team. When hiring, how do you find great people that you know are going to fit in your company?
This is a good question. I don't do it anymore. My COO, Zinka, who is very good at her job, is a great read of people. Derek handles creative, Dan handles our strategy, and Meredith handles our accounts. And they obviously get a say in things as well. They're kind of like the first line, but then it goes to Zinka and Charlene, and they've been at the agency for like 8 and 10 years, so they know the culture. They know kind of like the people we have there. They know what's important to us as a group. So yeah, I would say that my biggest strength in doing that is letting it go.
And that sounds like it helps alleviate probably a lot of pressure too, having multiple other people who are responsible for their own departments help in making that decision.
Well, ultimately it's their department. Like, if you don't allow the people who are running those teams to be a part of that decision, like that's crazy. Like they're going to be the ones ultimately that these people are reporting into. So I would say that is probably the most important. I mean, obviously getting Zinka and getting a CFO and COO involved is vitally important too, but literally my role now in hiring is, this is the person, here's the resume, this is the person, this is what we think of them, here's our assessment, here's how we think they're going to excel, here's some of the things they need to work on. Ultimately, all I got to do is sign off on, like, here's their salary. I just sign off and I say, look, if you guys think this is a good fit, then go with it.
Before we move to the customer side of things, do you mind talking about revenue?
We're a 7-figure agency. We started from zero. I mean, not zero, but we started from a very small amount. And it was, like I said, me in a front porch and my laptop and in an old farmhouse and like a screened in front porch. And then my wife in October, I live in New Jersey, it got too cold and she kept putting blankets on me. And she's like, why don't you just move to the basement? And I'm like, that's I had my head so buried in the sand trying to get this thing up and running. I was like, that's a great idea. She's like, yeah, that's why I said it. But yeah, we kind of grew from very humble beginnings. I think that the revenue side, I think is important, but I also think the legacy that you leave. Would I love to be a $10 million agency? Yeah. Like, we're not a $10 million agency. That's the reality. But on the other side of it, like, I've gotten to coach my son in football and lacrosse. I've got to be there for a lot of awesome memories that I'm hoping he'll never forget, in the same way when I was old enough to understand it about my dad and being there, that I appreciate now as a 47-year-old dad.
Well, I appreciate you adding context to that, because I really like to ask that question, because I feel like if somebody's only making $1,000, $2,000, nothing, a month, it's really hard to take what they're saying, without going, okay, well, you haven't really learned a whole lot of lessons yet. So that's kind of why I asked that question. And then I think the extra context you added is really amazing too, because it sounds to me like a lot of people create jobs. A lot of people create businesses and they've just turned out to be jobs and takes everything from them, where you have created an actual business that has given you time freedom. And so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really happened because, adding further context to it, I think you really have to be knowledgeable and have enough emotional intelligence to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and surround yourself with people that are good at your weaknesses, and then add to the mix in places that you have strengths in your skill set. And then together, when you can create, like if I would have said almost 18 years ago, I'd be sitting here with a team of 16 people and I'd be managing like an agency and like being responsible for all their livelihoods, like no chance. But, and it hasn't always been, like a bed of roses, 2018 and 19, I bought out 2 partners. Like there's been really hard moments.
So moving to the customer side of things, this is a question that I was really interested in asking you, because I can imagine there's a lot of give and take with clients. Like when a new client comes in for brand building, like what are your first steps to understand and identify their goals?
We do a lot even before a proposal gets done. So our process is pretty simple and straightforward. We do like an intro call. For me, that's just with me. That's like, okay, we're doing, for lack of a better word, like we're doing the asshole test. Like, are you cool or are you not? And if they get past that, then we do with Dan and Mare, we do what's called a discovery call, which is a deep dive into like their KPIs. That's another big thing that we do that I feel allows us to be successful, is like, we're not talking about like amorphous goals here. Like, you want to grow your business by 15% year over year. Like, okay, that's what we're going to make our budget based off of. And this is how much work and time it's going to take to do that. A lot of the legwork is done even before we get to the proposal. And then we get to the proposal and it's like, all right, we've done all this. We've asked all the questions. We've put all the goals on paper. We know exactly what you're looking to achieve. It doesn't always end up in a deal, because they might not be like, if they want to grow their business by 30%, that may be a $10,000 a month retainer. You might not be able to afford that, but we try to be as upfront as possible before we ever get to that moment. So a lot of our contracts are presented and it's like, it's not a long lead time, because we've already kind of done our homework and our legwork to be able to tell you this is how long it's going to take to get from point A to point B.
What do you determine are the right channels for a client's message? For instance, like the factors that influence whether you're using social media, content marketing, stuff like that.
I would say overarching, digital has made it a lot easier to be able to report. We're vertical agnostic and Dan leads the charge on that. And every single client is different based on, what the KPIs are, like what we're looking to achieve. Conversions, usually it's conversions like rubber meets the road conversions. It's dollars and cents in and out. Like what's your ROAS? That's a lot of what we do. But yeah, I mean, it all depends. It's all different based on, the vertical and the client and what their goals are. But I would say on a whole, if you're looking at it from a 30,000 foot view, digital marketing has made it a lot easier and a lot more efficient to be able to reach a potential consumer, because we can pivot very quickly. We know what's happening almost in real time. We can run a campaign and 3 days later know if it's working or it's not working. Like, what do we need to pivot on? And so, that's why a lot of our clients have been clients for 10 years, 8 years, 12 years. It's been something that has been, a lot of our clients have become friends. That's the best way I can explain it.
With marketing platforms changing over time, how do you help clients stay relevant with evolving expectations and the digital trends?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. Dan and his team, they're bringing up new pieces of software, they're staying on top of it. We try to push them with education in terms of like, getting certificates and things like that. But they run point. They have autonomy to come to us and say, look, we're making a recommendation for this software because it's going to help us with this client. It's going to do these 5 things. We absolutely need it. And if that's the case, very rarely will we ever say no.
One question I was really excited to ask you, because I think there's probably a lot of give and take here, is like with client expectations, How do you establish and maintain clear communication to ensure your clients' visions are realized, but also, you guys are established masters kind of at this game?
Yeah, we keep the lines of communication open. We tell our clients it's 100% collaborative. If they're seeing things that we launch a campaign, they're seeing things in their business because they're like, feet on the street. They're ultimately the ones that are seeing things in real time. Yeah, we keep the lines of communication open, and we preach collaboration because to me, it's paramount. If they have questions, every client has my cell phone number. So it rarely ever gets to they need me personally anymore, but they'll call and be like, hey, I need this to happen. Or they'll call and be like, oh, so, we had one client, she's got a Medi spa, like she's selling to over, locations, which is awesome. But, like it's being on a journey with them. The wins are awesome, but you also got to be there for the losses, and you got to take accountability for that. And in my opinion, like, going back to the question, like, how do we keep the team relevant and successful? It's the same principle, I think, with regards to the clients. It's like, for us, it's all about deflecting the praise and like accepting the failure. Like, that's my job. My job as the leader is to, like, I'll take on any failure. The only thing I ask of them is to, like, if you got an issue or you got a problem, like, don't just come to me with the problem, come with a proposed solution as well. And obviously it's a little different for a client. You're not going to tell them to come with a proposed solution, but that like give and take of, and like having respect, I think is the key to a successful company. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I think a lot of people running businesses miss the mark of that. And I think a lot of issues could be, I try to mentor and help out a lot of people that are just like, a lot of people come to me. They're like, I need mentorship. Can you help me? This and that. And I think a lot of problems could be alleviated if people just accepted it, like, were accountable for the failures and deflected praise for the wins. I think a lot of ills in any business that any leader has can be alleviated.
This question might be kind of obvious to people in the marketing realm, but maybe not so much for people who have never built a campaign. How do you measure the success of a marketing campaign or a brand building campaign? What metrics or KPIs are most important to those evaluations?
Subjective. I think for us, it's usually what's the ROAS. 9 out of 10 of our accounts, it's all based on ROAS. What am I putting in? What am I getting back? And if the ROAS is 2x, 3x, 4x, we have had some that are 7x. Usually if your client's making money, life is good. That's how we judge DSM on how well we're doing. So why wouldn't we apply that principle to a client and say, as we're doing the discovery, like, you want 3x ROAS, and so that's what we're shooting for.
Moving kind of to the end of the interview and more like personal insights from you, are there any new trends in digital marketing or technology that you believe will be essential for brands in the near future?
AI is bound to happen. Like, everybody's talking about it. We're a firm believer that AI has its place. We use it for certain things, but we're small enough that you're never going to replace the personal relationship. While it helps, and it helps our creative team, it helps with our content team in terms of writing, it's never going to replace the personal relationship. And we'll go to our grave saying that. Our accounts are not Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 100 companies where it's like produce. Like, they want relationships. They want to know that even though we're remote, like, we still go and see our clients. We still, they still want to know that we're alive, and we don't do everything via Zoom or whatever. So I think AI will a more prominent role in what we do moving forward, but I don't think it will ever, at least for a company our size, it will ever fully take away from that relational element that is very, very important when you are dealing with people.
I think that'll settle a lot of people's minds, as anything on the internet related to AI is it's apocalyptic and it's going to steal everyone's jobs. And
may steal some people's jobs. It's got its purpose. If you don't want to have your job stolen, don't go into something that could ultimately be done quicker, faster than a robot. I mean, the world is totally, is always evolving, or be a part of something that it's not, where they believe that it's important to have personal relationships with people, and there's accountability there beyond a chatbot. We have clients that their whole business is driven by AI, and they do insurance, and they've been able to streamline the company a great deal. But at the end of the day, we can't talk with a robot. We actually need a human being that's still like leading the line to say, like, this is what we need to do next.
There's a question I like to ask most entrepreneurs that I meet. I think it gives the audience kind of a sense of how you got to where you are. And that question is, what was your childhood like? Did you always want to own your own business and be an entrepreneur?
I went to school I got a history degree. I was going to be a history teacher and a coach. I always wanted to coach. But I graduated in 2000 and with a history degree, and I couldn't get a teaching job. And I moved home. I had a single mom after my dad passed away, and she's like, dude, you got a month. Like, you could live here, but I ain't doing your clothes. I ain't cooking your food. Like, you got to figure it out. And so I had a friend of mine who graduated a year before, and she's like, you want to be a media buyer? And, I was like, I had buddies that lived in Hoboken and whatever. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And this girl, Suzanne, was like, just come in for an interview. And now I look at it, like my first job, I was making $26,000 a year, and I was spending and paying taxes for both New York and New Jersey, because I lived in New Jersey, and like commuting into the city. And I was probably bringing home like less than $10,000 a year. And I could see why my mom was like frustrated, but I paid my dues. I did my thing. And in 5 years, I worked my way up from a junior buyer to a buying director. And that was, my childhood. And no, in my childhood, I wanted to be a professional football player. I definitely didn't want to, I had no inkling that I was going to go into advertising. It's not like I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor from when I was 5 years old. And, in my mind, I was like, up until high school, when I realized kids were getting bigger and faster, I was like, I'm Lawrence Taylor. Like, I can do this all day. I probably wanted to be a professional football player. And
Nice.
obviously that didn't pan out because I'm 5'9", 185.
What advice would you give to someone looking to start their own business?
Be prepared to fail. Learn how to carry yourself in a way where people know you're accountable, and that you're willing to hear them, like really hear them, not just listen to them. Success is not a linear line. It's full of ups and downs, and I'm almost 18 years into it, and I'm still learning how to succeed. Have patience, listen to people, have good mentors, be accepting of constructive criticism. A lot of the things I wasn't doing when I first started. Listen to the people that are there that are supporting you. I think that's important. I had a lot of great people above me, especially after my dad passed away. It's having good people around you. It's listening to advice. It's learning my biggest thing was learning how to navigate failure and be open-minded to constructive criticism. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I'm seeing a trend in your story, whether it's when you were growing up or your business, is good people, having good people around.
I had a lot of people from guys like Kenny Sullivan, guys like a Gary Caton, these guys who were mentors for me, to my wife. My wife, we've been married, it'll be 20 years in February, right on the heels of, launching this 18 years ago. And she's been an amazing support, like from creating the first logo. She's been an amazing support. The first few years I didn't take a salary. She was the sole breadwinner as I grew this thing. And there's a lot of things that go into creating a successful business that go beyond yourself.
And my final question is, where can people find more about you and your business?
Online, it's www. If you even use that anymore, it's D as in dog, S as in Sam, M as in Mary group, group.com. That's our website. We're on all the socials. I think it's just under the DSM group, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, if you want to look me up, we have our company profile on LinkedIn. I have my personal profile. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I'm open. It's me, like I don't have anybody running my account. So, if people like I've had people come off a podcast and ask me, can I ask you a question about like my business, this and that? Like that's probably the best place to find me. I'm on LinkedIn every day. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And if you're in New Jersey, we're located in Franklin Lakes.
Darren, it was so awesome to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much inspiration. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey, for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to share.